Friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too, because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. Raise fist medium dark skin tone. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. Colonel Zara Thompson stood resolutely as the steel handcuffs dug into her wrists, blood trickling down her fingers. The officers laughed, their mockery echoing in the air until she slowly raised her cuffed hands in a perfect military salute. "Gentlemen," she whispered, her voice steady, "you just assaulted the highest-ranking black female officer in Marine history." This was not just a routine trip to pick up her mother's medication. It was a moment that would shake an entire police department to its core. Zara had returned to her childhood home in Maplewood Heights, a historically black neighborhood in Philadelphia, to care for her mother, Clara, who had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. As she prepared for the day, she felt the weight of her dual identity, a devoted daughter and a decorated Marine. Dressed in civilian clothes to avoid unnecessary attention, Zara stepped outside, her heart racing as she noticed a police cruiser slowly trailing her. The officers inside watched her with keen interest. She took a deep breath, recalling her father's words. "In uniform or out, you always represent something bigger than yourself." Today, she represented every black person just trying to make a home safely. As she drove to the pharmacy, she noticed a cruiser following her, maintaining a distance that felt predatory. Zara's military training kicked in. She drove cautiously, obeying every traffic law, determined to avoid giving them any excuse to pull her over. But as she parked and stepped out, the officers approached her, blocking her path. "Ma'am, can we have a word with you?" Officer Blake asked, his hand resting near his holster. Zara's heart sank. She recognized the tactic. This was not a random stop. "I'm picking up medication for my mother," she replied, lifting the pharmacy bag slightly. "I live in the neighborhood." "Your vehicle matches a description of one involved in a robbery," Officer Grant said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Zara felt a familiar anger rise within her, but kept her composure. "I have my ID," she said, reaching into her purse. She handed over her Pennsylvania driver's license, deliberately not showing her military ID. If they were legitimate officers, her civilian ID should suffice. As they scrutinized her license, Zara felt the tension in the air shift. Bystanders began to gather, phones out, recording the interaction. She could see Dr. Samuel Carter, her childhood mentor, watching from the pharmacy entrance, concern etched on his face. "While we wait for a background check, mind if we take a look in your vehicle?" Grant asked, though it was clear it wasn't really a question. "I would mind," Zara replied firmly. "I don't consent to a search without probable cause." The officers exchanged glances, their expressions hardening. "You're being uncooperative," Blake said, stepping closer. Zara stood her ground. "I'm simply exercising my rights." The situation escalated quickly. Before she knew it, she was being handcuffed, the metal biting into her skin. "You're hurting me," she stated, her voice steady despite the pain. "I am not resisting." As they shoved her against her car, Zara felt the eyes of the crowd on her. She was aware of the cameras recording every moment, and she knew she had to remain calm. "I am Colonel Zara Thompson of the United States Marine Corps," she declared, her voice carrying authority. "I am being unlawfully detained." The officers seemed taken aback, but their arrogance remained. They began searching her vehicle, and Zara felt a surge of determination. She would not let them intimidate her. "Sergeant Lewis," she said, addressing the officer who had just arrived, "I am being detained without cause. I demand to speak to a superior." Lewis's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "You're being confrontational," he said, but Zara could see the uncertainty in his eyes. As the officers continued their legal search, Zara's mind raced. She had faced worse situations in combat zones, and she knew how to gather intelligence. She mentally documented every violation, every threat, and every procedural error. Suddenly, a black SUV pulled up, and out stepped Captain David Mitchell, her aide from the Marines, in full dress uniform. The sight of him brought a wave of relief. "Colonel Thompson," he said, his voice steady, "I'm here to assist you." The officers' demeanor shifted as they realized they were no longer in control. The crowd outside had grown, and the media was beginning to take notice. "Let her go," Mitchell commanded, his presence demanding respect. "This is a military officer you're detaining unlawfully." As the officers hesitated, Zara seized the moment. "I formally request that these officers be investigated for civil rights violations and excessive force," she stated, her voice unwavering. Chief Roberts arrived moments later, having been alerted to the situation. He surveyed the scene, taking in Zara's bloodied wrists and the nervous postures of the officers. "Colonel Thompson," he said, his tone softening, "I apologize for your treatment today. Medical personnel are on their way." Zara nodded, but she wasn't finished. "I want official records of every officer involved and every procedural violation," she insisted. The chief nodded, recognizing the gravity of the situation. "Of course, Colonel. We will document everything." As the paramedics treated her injuries, Zara felt a sense of empowerment. She had turned the tables on her oppressors, and the community had rallied around her. The officers who had sought to intimidate her were now facing scrutiny from the highest levels of authority. In the days that followed, Zara's story spread like wildfire. The videos of her arrest went viral, and the community mobilized in support. Protests erupted, demanding accountability and reform within the police department. Zara stood at the forefront of this movement, using her experience to advocate for systemic change. She proposed the Thompson-Carter Police Accountability Act, aimed at addressing the very issues that had led to her unlawful detention. 1 year after her arrest, Zara stood at the podium in Philadelphia City Council chambers, addressing a packed room. "What happened to me was not unique," she stated, her voice strong. "The only unusual aspect was that it happened to someone with the training and resources to demand accountability. For every case like mine that makes headlines, thousands of our fellow citizens suffer similar treatment in silence." The council unanimously passed a proposed act, a testament to the power of community and the importance of standing up against injustice. Zara had transformed her painful experience into a catalyst for reform, ensuring that her story would inspire others to seek justice. As she left the council chambers, Zara felt a sense of fulfillment. She had not only fought for her rights, but had also paved the way for others to do the same. The salute that had once symbolized her defiance now represented hope and resilience for an entire community. In the end, Colonel Zara Thompson's journey was not just about one woman's fight against injustice. It was about the collective strength of a community standing tall, seeking justice, and demanding accountability. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that the fight for equality and justice was far from over. As the sun set over Philadelphia, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had faced down the very system that sought to oppress her, and in doing so, she had ignited a movement. The community that had once felt powerless was now emboldened, ready to stand up against injustice. That Zara's story became a beacon of hope, inspiring others to share their experiences and demand change. The Thompson-Carter Police Accountability Act was just the beginning. It laid the groundwork for a new era of transparency and accountability within law enforcement, ensuring that no one would have to endure what she had faced as she prepared to return to her military duties. Zara knew that her fight was far from over. She would continue to advocate for those who felt voiceless, using her platform to amplify their stories. The salute that had once been a symbol of her defiance now served as a reminder of the power of standing tall in the face of adversity. In the months that followed, Zara worked tirelessly, collaborated with community leaders, activists, and law enforcement officials to implement the reforms outlined in her act. She organized workshops and training sessions, bringing together veterans and community members to foster understanding and build trust. Zara's efforts began to bear fruit. The police department started to see changes in its approach to community policing, emphasizing respect and accountability. Officers were trained to recognize their biases and engage with the community in meaningful ways. The relationship between law enforcement and the residents of Maplewood Heights began to heal. One day, as Zara walked the neighborhood, she was greeted with smiles and waves. Children ran up to her, eager to share their stories and dreams. They looked up to her not just as a military officer, but as a symbol of hope and resilience. "Thank you for standing up for us, Colonel," one young boy exclaimed, his eyes shining with admiration. Zara knelt down to his level, a warm smile on her face. Remember, it's not just about me. It's about all of us standing together for what's right. As she continued her walk, Zara felt a sense of pride swell within her. The community was no longer just a place she had grown up in. It was a place where change was happening, where voices were being heard, and where justice was being sought. The mural that had been painted in her honor, a pair of hands, brown-skinned and dignified, rising in a perfect military salute, stood as a testament to the transformation that had taken place. Beneath it, the words "Stand tall, seek justice" serve as a rallying cry for all who pass by. Zara knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With the support of her community and the lessons she had learned, she was determined to continue to fight for justice and equality. As she looked toward the horizon, Zara Thompson felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was not just a soldier. She was a leader, an advocate, and a champion for change. And with every step she took, she knew she was making a difference. Not just for herself, but for generations to come.